day, students, and welcome back to Science for Young Minds with Merivit Education Center. My name is Teacher Babs, and this series of lessons are for Platoon 5. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about living things in the environment. But before that, let's define first what is an environment. Are you ready, students? Very good. An environment is everything around a living thing. Everything you see or you feel is part of your environment. In this series, we are going to discover how a living thing interacts with its own environment. So what are you waiting for? Let's start now. Before we go on to our lesson proper, let's learn first the vocabulary for today. Now first we have the word survival. Survival is the act of continuing to stay alive. Second, we have the word photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process in which green plants use sunlight to make their own food. And last word, we have respiration. Respiration is the inhaling of oxygen and the exhaling of carbon dioxide. Now to our lesson proper. There are 5 non-living things that can affect the survival of a living thing in the environment. First, we have air. Second, light. Third, we have water. Then we have soil, and lastly, we have temperature. Plants and animals live in areas where conditions are suitable for them to grow and reproduce. Let's discuss the 5 components one by one. First, we have air. The air around us supplies oxygen to all the organisms living on land. Plants and animals need to take in oxygen from the air for respiration. Plants also need carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is also produced when animals and plants carry out respiration. Second component is light. The sun is the major source of light and heat energy for all living things on the earth. Sunlight is necessary for plants to grow and to provide energy to warm the earth's atmosphere. Animals also need sunlight to catch their prey and to avoid their predators. Some animals bask in the sun to warm up. Now third is water. Animals need water for their bodies to function properly. Water is a habitat to some animals like fishes, sharks, dolphins, crabs, and many more. Water is very important to all living things. Living things cannot survive without water. Some organisms, like fishes, can only breathe in water. Down to our fourth one, we have soil. Soil is a thin layer of material covering the surface of the earth. Most plants grow in soil. Soil also provides nutrients for plants to grow and reproduce. Now, soil is also a habitat to some animals, for example, earthworms and moths. Earthworms do not have eyes to see or ears to hear their surrounding. However, they sense their surrounding by using only their skin. And lastly, temperature. The temperature of an environment depends on the amount of sun rays that reaches the place. It can be hot or cold. Take for instance, during winter, most animals such as polar bears will hibernate by going into a deep sleep to survive without food. Another example is when birds avoid winter by migrating or traveling to warmer places where they can find food and shelter. Now, a living thing interacts with other living things in its environment in many ways. We will learn about this one by one. First, living thing depends on other living things for food. The animal kingdom eats other living things for survival. Observe the examples on your screen. Either plants, or animals that eat plants. Living things eat living things. In an environment, all organisms depend on one another in order to eat. Next, living thing can depend on another living thing for food and shelter. Some animals depend on plants for shelter and protection. Trees provide shelter for animals from the scorching sun and rain. Now for our third one. Living thing competes with other living things for food and shelter. For example, lions compete with other animals for food and space. For the fourth one, living thing depends on other living things to reproduce. A bee, for example, helps a flower to pollinate. In turn, a flower provides the bee with food. And lastly, living thing can also cause harm to another living thing, like how aphids, or for example, on the picture on your screen, take nutrients from a plant, which cause the plants to become weaker. As we have mentioned, living things all need shelter. Now, where do you think living things seek shelter and protection? Let's define first what is a shelter. A shelter is a safe place for living things to grow and reproduce. We all live on our homes. All living things need shelter for. Shelter provides us rest and comfort. Shelter also provides protection from weather and our enemies. Like us, animals also need shelter. They need shelter to protect themselves from rain, snow, and their enemies. Now, some animals make their own shelter, such as the examples on your screen. Most birds build nests on trees or in the holes of trees. However, some animals like cave animals find their own shelters, such as salamanders, snakes, and spiders. Caves also provide shelter for animals like bats and raccoons. Trees also provide shelter to many animals like koala and birds. Monkeys also. Trees keep the animals safe from their predators on the ground. Some animals seek their shelter and protection underground, like burrowing animals. A burrow is a tunnel or hole that an animal digs for a place to live or as a place of protection. Burrows provide shelter from predators and extreme temperature. Insects, clams, sea urchins, spiders, and worms all exhibit burrowing behavior. Some animals also seek other animals for protection, like fishes. Some fish hide among corals to escape from their predators. Now it's time for a trivia. Did you know that hermit crabs do not have their own shells or their shelter? They move into empty shells left by other animals such as sea snails. To summarize this lesson, let us take note. Living things depend on their interaction with each other and on non-living things for survival. Alright, that's all for today. See you all on the next episodes of Science for Young Minds with Merivit Education Center. Goodbye and stay safe!